is not beneficial. And we are precisely interested in ensuring that these formats, these forums that are here, they occur annually to promote a better understanding of each other's positions so that everyone acts openly without holding any stones or hidden plans against anyone. But for now, the process is ongoing in different areas. I am convinced that our approach is more promising.
Sergey Viktorovich, the BRICS summit, which will conclude in Rio in a few days, showed that against the backdrop of increasingly strict sanctions from Washington, BRICS is becoming a reliable alternative to the sanctions chaos. In your opinion, are the ASEAN countries ready to begin more actively cooperating with Russia in particular and BRICS as a whole, not just in words but in deeds? Thank you.
Well, you know, to be honest, I think that ASEAN countries show interest in cooperation with Russia regardless of what is happening in the West and what actions the United States or their allies undertake towards them. They don't have that, you know. If the West hadn't pressured us, we wouldn't be friends with Russia. The friendship with Russia began long before the current US administration started imposing sanctions, including tariffs. Consider those sanctions too. No, I do not see, you know, in the way our relations with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are developing and how cooperation is developing within BRICS. I do not see any response, direct response. But if you have a choice, either to trade in the context of an association where no unfair means of suppressing competitors are not applied, on one hand, and on the other hand, trade with those who will blackmail you, then probably the conclusion is obvious.
Sergey Viktorovich, based on the meetings you've held, well, within the framework of the Russia-ASEAN Forum and others, what conclusions could you draw? Are the ASEAN countries ready to actively resist the advancement of NATO and NATO's attempts to establish itself in the region? And consequently, do the ASEAN countries have the necessary resources to remain a guarantor of security in the region today, especially considering the tariffs that Trump imposed on many ASEAN countries, serious tariffs?
I just spoke in detail about our understanding, about our vision of the actions NATO is taking here, trying to establish its infrastructure here, as you say. I have no doubt that ASEAN countries understand what is being discussed. They understand that they are essentially being offered to remain formally ASEAN members, while simultaneously joining structures that are not inclusive, have a bloc nature, and in essence they are aimed at creating a sort of politico-diplomatic front for containing primarily China, this is no secret, but also the Russian Federation. I don't want to decide for them now. It's their sovereign choice. We will perceive it as such. But the fact that preserving ASEAN's unity and its central role in defining mechanisms, formats, and the architecture of cooperation in Southeast Asia best serves the interests of all. I have no doubts about this. We will proceed from this.
Anastasia Dombitskaya, Kommersant. Sergey Viktorovich, Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday, following the talks with you, stated that some new plan for Ukraine was discussed. I'd like to know which side proposed these new approaches. What do they consist of, and what is their fundamental difference from the previous ones?
And do the supplies of American weapons to NATO also fit into the new plan? Was this discussed?
I want to respond with words from Donald Trump, like I would tell you, but I will. And expect big surprises, he said. Well, I don't know about big surprises, but you see, if you are familiar with diplomatic activities, you often accompany us. There are things that are not commented on. Yes, we discussed Ukraine. We confirmed the position that President Putin has outlined, including once again on the 3rd of July in a conversation with President Trump. Regarding this dialogue, leak, recording, I don't know, neural network or not, about the bombings of Moscow and Beijing, well, still we discussed serious matters.
Sergey Viktorovich, was the issue of offensive weapons discussed with Marco Rubio? And is there any understanding of the future of START 3, which expires next year?
It does not continue further. It was not discussed.
And Sergey Viktorovich, I also have a question about diplomatic activity. Recently, Chancellor Merkel stated that diplomatic methods for resolving the Ukrainian conflict are exhausted. And I have a twofold question. On one hand, I'd like to ask for your official reaction as the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And on the other hand, as an experienced diplomat, I'd like to ask you professionally, do you think Germany's actions fit into such a diplomatic arsenal? Do they relate to the diplomatic sphere of work?
That's a very good question. It troubles us because the latest statements, actions of both Berlin and Paris and London indicate that this current class of politicians that came to power in these, the number of other countries, they have forgotten the lessons of history, forgotten the conclusions that all humanity has drawn from these lessons of history, and essentially are trying once again to raise Europe for war, not a hybrid one, but a war against Russia. And when there was a pre-shown press conference of the French Foreign Minister Barrot, who at the press conference or some political event was sitting on stage with other participants. He was asked a question from the audience. A French person who often visited Donbass asked a question and inquired why Paris supports the Nazi regime that is actively reviving, well, already revived in Ukraine. And if you saw how Mr. Barrot lost his composure in such a hysterical tone, shouting, "We are defending the territorial integrity, international law, and the territorial integrity of Ukraine." Well, it drew applause from some part of the audience. But, you know, after everything that is known about the actions of the Kiev regime, what is known about why it needs territorial integrity? It needs it to suppress all the rights of the Russian and Russian-speaking population, and those who disagree with Kiev's position after the coup, to physically eliminate them. I handed Marco Rubio a small excerpt from quotes by Zelensky yesterday. Shamihal, Yermak, Podolyak, where it is directly stated about the necessity to destroy the Russians legally, or better yet, physically. And when Mr. Barrot and those like him declare that they want to see nothing but the territorial integrity of Ukraine, well, that is self-exposure. Here, regarding Mr. Merz, he has said amusing things more than once. He even stated that his main goal is to make Germany the leading military power in Europe again. On the word again, he didn't even hesitate. He also said things like, let Israel work in Iran. They are doing the dirty work for us. This is also a quote from the ministers of concentration camps, when they prefer to use collaborators to destroy Jews so as not to dirty their own hands, understanding that it was a dirty business. And if Mr. Merz believes that peaceful opportunities have been used and exhausted, perhaps he decided to fully and completely dedicate himself to the militarization of Germany at the expense of his people, just to again strut under Nazi slogans to counter the threats coming from Russia. This is utter nonsense. I hope that any reasonable politician understands this. President Putin has repeatedly said that this is nonsense. It is simply used to keep the people obedient and to prevent the protests from breaking out, which are inevitably caused by the worsening socioeconomic situation, the stagnation observed in Europe, and all this at the expense of the fact that hundreds and hundreds of billions are again being sent, were sent, and are being sent to Ukraine. Well, and I came across a quote here. I was interested in how Europe once perceived Germany. And here is a quote from the Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet on the 22nd of June, 1941. Editorial quote. Germany has broken its chains and with new strength has emerged into freedom. Towards its European and historically significant mission to crush the Red regime, which poses a threat to the very essence of freedom. That is, they praise the Nazis as a symbol of freedom. If Europe is heading towards this again, well, what can I say? It is sad. We will, of course, fully take this into account in all areas of our planning. Good afternoon. Here in Kuala Lumpur, we are holding an event under ASEAN. They are annual, currently at the ministerial level, and summits will take place in the fall. Three main formats. The dialogue partnership between Russia and ASEAN. Yesterday, the next annual meeting at the ministerial level took place. The second format is the East Asian summits, which involve a wide range of countries. First of all, those who develop with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the dialogue partnership with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and projects are being considered. It was conceived so that the East Asia summits consider projects of practical cooperation in economic, trade, transport, and cultural connectivity. Well, the third format is the ASEAN Regional Forum on Security. It includes an even wider range of participants beyond the members of the association itself. And all of this together constitutes the annual ASEAN events that take place here in Malaysia. It is symbolic that it is in Malaysia that the Federation participated in such events for the first time for the first time as the foundation was laid for the dialogue partnership between Russia and ASEAN, which has since reached the level of a strategic partnership as confirmed in our joint documents. This year we evaluated the progress of fulfilling commitments that were mutually undertaken during previous meetings, including the Russia-ASEAN summit that took place in 2016 and continues to be a forum that established the strategic directions of our cooperation. We are preparing an evaluation of the progress of implementing the strategic partnership plan for 2021 to 2025. In essence, it is being implemented in all its main components. And noted today that our special representatives who are located at the ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta are actively working on the fourth strategic plan. We hope to approve it by the end of the current year, ideally at the Russia-ASEAN summit, which is scheduled for October here in the capital of Malaysia. As for the meeting that took place today, the meeting of the East Asia Summit member countries, it was, as I already mentioned, primarily focused on the tasks of developing practical cooperation projects in various areas. We advocate for this to be the foundation of the East Asia Summit's activities. Well, unfortunately, our Western colleagues who participate in these events are increasingly resorting to politicization and ideologization, Ukrainization, which was evident in today's discussions to the detriment of the potential inherent in the East Asian summits for achieving practical results, important for both our countries and our citizens. We have been promoting initiatives for several years on rapid response to epidemic threats. Announcer, it seemed more relevant than when we proposed it back in 2021, but it was approved. However, because the West has taken a stand, this interaction is practically going nowhere. We also proposed in the year 2023 to develop cooperation in the field of tourism, to actively promote tourist exchanges, so that this connection between our countries would extend to the level of societies and citizens. Well, tourism is developing in any case, but the incentives we proposed, which were generally approved for implementation in daily activities, have also seen little done so far. We also propose, and it was agreed upon, to develop cooperation in the development of remote areas. In major countries, in Russia, by the way, and in Indonesia, and in Malaysia, and in the People's Republic of China, there are remote areas where civilization has reached, of course. But benefits are not spread as actively as in metropolises. And a current task for everyone. I expect that practical results will be achieved on it. Another one of our initiatives, also from the sphere of humanitarian cooperation, is to ensure cultural connectivity of our countries. Eurasia is a vast continent, the cradle of several great civilizations, and the cultural heritage of each of these civilizations, of course, deserves to ensure mutual enrichment. I hope this initiative of ours will also be implemented, brought to life. Well, naturally, at the meetings of the East Asian summits, at the session of the ASEAN Regional Forum on Security, there is always an exchange of opinions on political problems, political issues. All ASEAN members and most partner countries, including Russia, today spoke with great concern about the ongoing and even worsening tragedy in the Palestinian territories, where following the disaster, the humanitarian catastrophe, which was artificially created in the Gaza Strip, a similar situation is developing in another part of the Palestinian territories. I mean the west bank of the Jordan River, where Israel continues an aggressive policy of creating more and more settlements in increasingly record volumes. So there will soon be nothing left of the territories where the Palestinian National Authority operates. Today, I was surprised to read that there is already a proposal to create the Emirate of Hebron. And this is seen as the first step towards promoting the concept of creating the United Palestinian Emirates on Palestinian lands. It sounds like fantasy at this stage, but the facts that such ideas are surfacing more and more often in the public space speaks to the risks which are developing and continue to escalate regarding the prospects of creating a Palestinian state as decided by the United Nations General Assembly and Security Council. And this is, of course, a challenge, a big challenge for the international community. They spoke today, and we especially highlighted it about the problems that were created by Israel's unprovoked attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Why? Then missile and bomb strikes by the United States followed. This, of course, violates both international law, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, and the principles of the International Atomic Energy Agency, under whose safeguards the nuclear facilities that were attacked were located. We called for the announced truce to continue without any interruptions. And despite the damage and the harm that was inflicted, and the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation and the guarantees provided by the International Atomic Energy Agency regarding the facilities under its control, despite all this damage, try to rectify the situation and shift it to a political framework and resolve all problems exclusively through negotiations. Well, by the way, this is very important in order to prevent such disrespectful actions towards fundamental documents that are meant to ensure access to the peaceful use of nuclear energy without of any attempts and temptations to possess nuclear weapons, nuclear technologies for producing nuclear weapons. They also talked about the situation in Myanmar, where there are signs of normalization, and we support this process being carried out by the leadership. We also support ASEAN's efforts, help this normalization and fully restore Myanmar's participation, full participation in the work of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. For the Korean Peninsula, they highlighted the need to avoid any provocative actions that unfortunately continue against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, including through the strengthening of military alliances of the United States, South Korea, and Japan. Increasingly large-scale military exercises are being conducted, even with a nuclear component. So that's also a kind of conflict potential. It's serious here too, and we will actively contribute to ensuring the legitimate rights of our North Korean allies and preventing provocations that might end badly. And our Chinese friends, among the issues they consider a priority in this region, they highlighted the disputes over the South China Sea. We firmly believe that this problem should be resolved based on the code of conduct previously agreed upon between Beijing and the ASEAN member states. On this basis, the negotiations continue, and we consider it unacceptable for any extra-regional power to interfere in this process. The Chinese minister Wang Yi also mentioned quite extensively the situation around Taiwan, emphatically stressing the inviolability of the final resolution of the Taiwan issue based on the concept of a single state, the Chinese state. Attracted attention are the words of some of our Western colleagues who have previously stated that they respect the principle of one China. But the status quo cannot be changed. This is hypocrisy that is evident to anyone who is even slightly familiar with this issue and with how the West is currently acting in relations with Taiwan. The status quo for the West is essentially treating Taiwan as an independent state. Therefore, today we have once again reaffirmed the immutability of our approach in support of Beijing's position and our readiness to assist in implementing this position in every possible way. That's probably the main point. Please, questions.
Sergey Viktorovich, probably continuing from what you just mentioned, last year at a meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs leadership, Vladimir Putin announced an initiative for the necessity of a new architecture of Eurasian security centered on the principle that the security of one state cannot be ensured at the expense of the security of others. How is this idea generally received here in Asia and in ASEAN?
Particularly considering the ongoing course of militarization by NATO?
Thank you.
In essence, the initiative of forming a Eurasian security architecture is a development. The previous initiative of our president, which he proposed at the first Russia-ASEAN summit, namely about forming a large Eurasian partnership through establishing connections, deepening joint activities, joint projects and joint programs between the integration structures existing here on the Eurasian continent. Connections have already been established between the executive heads and the secretariats of the Eurasian Economic Union and the Commonwealth of Independent States. Between these organizations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and among them all, and ASEAN countries. This is a very useful, valuable process that allows harmonizing integration plans, projects, combining efforts, avoiding duplication, especially since the membership of all these integration formations intersects and overlaps. And we are promoting the concept of a greater Eurasian partnership with the understanding that discussions on this topic and practical negotiations on practical activities are open to all countries located on the Eurasian continent and to all integration structures. In particular, there are good prospects for establishing connections between Eurasic, SCO, CIS, ASEAN, and the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf, for example. In South Asia, on the South Asian Peninsula, there are integration associations. So there are many structures here that can beneficially engage in improving connectivity. This process creates, as various ideas are implemented into practical matters, creates a material foundation for discussions on ensuring security across the entire Eurasian continent. I have already touched on this topic repeatedly in the development of the President's initiative. In Africa too, and in Latin America as well, there are many sub-regional integration associations. But in both Africa and Latin America, there are continent-wide structures. These are the African Union and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. But in Eurasia, the largest, most powerful, richest, and fastest-growing region in the world, such a pan-continental structure in the form of a dialogue platform, it is not necessary to create an organization does not yet exist. And we understand perfectly that this process is not quick, that all the countries of the continent invited to participate in these discussions need to mature first. Our European neighbors, for the most part, are clearly not yet ready. they still clearly dream of extending their influence across the entire Eurasian continent through the North Atlantic Alliance and its infrastructure in a neo-colonial manner. They openly and unashamedly say that in the current conditions, yes, NATO is a defensive alliance and its main task is the protection of member countries' territories. But in the current conditions, they say, the threat to the territorial integrity and security of NATO countries comes from the Indo-Pacific region, as they call it, that is directly from the Pacific Ocean, meaning the South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and much more. And in our concept of Eurasian security and even the greater Eurasian partnership, one of the main principles is a respect for those structures that are created in various sub-regions, including respect for ASEAN, the central role that ASEAN plays. As a result, work that has continued for almost 60 years, bringing together countries interested in cooperation based on the principles of equality, openness, and inclusiveness. And so our concept respects the role of both ASEAN and other similar formations, but the concept promoted by NATO assumes that NATO will dictate to everyone how they should act, whether ASEAN is needed. Formally, yes. All Western countries participated today in the East Asia Summit meeting and the Regional Security Forum. But while saying beautiful words, at the same time, you know, they are creating trios, quartets, AUKUS, United States of America, Britain, Australia on the implementation of the project to create nuclear submarines. I already mentioned about attempts to introduce nuclear elements into military exercises in the south of the Korean Peninsula. There's the Pacific, Indo-Pacific Quartet, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and a number of other such trios, and Quad 1 and Quad 2 are trying to involve ASEAN members in these formations, sort of pulling them away from the association. We speak openly about this with our friends, and they perfectly understand the difference between an approach that invites everyone to the table for an equal dialogue and developing consensus positions that meet the interests of all states, reflecting a balance of these interests on the one hand, and the approach when, well, the North Atlanticists come here and start calling the shots, imposing their own order here. I believe that this is not beneficial, and we are precisely interested in ensuring that these formats, these forums that are here, they occur annually to promote a better understanding of each other's positions, so that everyone acts openly without holding any stones or hidden plans against anyone. But for now, the process is ongoing in different areas. I am convinced that our approach is more promising.
Sergey Viktorovich, the BRICS summit, which will conclude in Rio in a few days, showed that against the backdrop of increasingly strict sanctions from Washington, BRICS is becoming a reliable alternative to the sanctions chaos. In your opinion, are the ASEAN countries ready to begin more actively cooperating with Russia in particular and BRICS as a whole, not just in words but in deeds? Thank you.
Well, you know, to be honest, I think that ASEAN countries show interest in cooperation with Russia regardless of what is happening in the West and what actions the United States or their allies undertake towards them. They don't have that, you know. if the West hadn't pressured us, we wouldn't be friends with Russia. The friendship with Russia began long before the current US administration started imposing sanctions, including tariffs. Consider those sanctions too. No, I do not see, in the way our relations with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are developing and how cooperation is developing within BRICS. I do not see any response, direct response. But if you have a choice, either to trade in the context of an association where no unfair means of suppressing competitors are not applied, on one hand, and on the other hand, trade with those who will blackmail you, then probably the conclusion is obvious.
Sergey Viktorovich, based on the meetings you've held, within the framework of the Russia-ASEAN Forum and others, what conclusions could you draw? Are the ASEAN countries ready to actively resist the advancement of NATO and NATO's attempts to establish itself in the region? And consequently, do the ASEAN countries have the necessary resources to remain a guarantor of security in the region today, especially considering the tariffs that Trump imposed on many ASEAN countries, serious tariffs?
I just spoke in detail about our understanding, about our vision of the actions NATO is taking here, trying to establish its infrastructure here, as you say. I have no doubt that ASEAN countries understand what is being discussed. They understand that they are essentially being offered to remain formally ASEAN members, while simultaneously joining structures that are not inclusive, have a bloc nature, and in essence, they are aimed at creating a sort of politico-diplomatic front for containing primarily China, this is no secret, but also the Russian Federation. I don't want to decide for them now.